dudes and dudettes. How are you guys? This is Chazzy and welcome back to Cinema Chazzy, the segment on this channel where I review the many movies that I watch, whether they're old or new, classic or modern. I always said that in the intro and I can't seem to remember that they all mean the same thing. I mean, old is classic, new is modern, they're all synonyms there, but I just keep mixing them up, you know. And today's review is actually going to be not that far away from the first one, you know, because as you guys may have already noticed, I've been playing a lot of Star Wars Battlefront 2 on my channel lately, you know, and with that is gonna come a flood of Star Wars content. So I recently reviewed Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, you know, the original 77 one, and today, of course, I'm going to be covering the sequel, which came out 3 years later, Star Wars Episode 5 The Empire Strikes Back. That's probably not going to be the title of that it just showed up here. It's probably just going to be Star Wars, you know, The Empire Strikes Back, you know, because it's just way too long of a freaking title for a movie, you know. Now, it is the second Star Wars movie released ever, but the fifth chronologically because it is Episode 5, you know, and this is unanimously considered by many to be the best Star Wars movie ever in the entire 9-movie saga at this point, you know, and it is my favorite from the original trilogy. No surprise there. I think a lot of people can agree with that, you know. This movie is one of the prime examples in cinema history of a sequel being even better than the original, you know, at least in my opinion, because usually sequels suck, you know, they don't really capture the same energy as the original, but this one here truly was something special. The Empire Strikes Back just blew expectations out of the water, you know, and went on to become one of the greatest movies ever made. And now it did have a bit of a troubled production because it wouldn't be Star Wars and George Lucas directing if it didn't have, you know, some issues, you know. Now, initially it had a budget of $8 million, but because of production delays and a few issues here and there, that budget actually got inflated to $30.5 million, you know, in the final cut. However, over the years, you know, with the release of it in theaters and, you know, other marketing, you know, sales and merchandise and this and that, it went on to gross upwards of $549 million worldwide, which puts it right now as the 13th highest grossing film in history, you know. Wow, that's a lot of cash, and yet only 13th, man. But there are a few that have grossed like $1 billion or so, so I guess that kind of explains it. Now, the thing with Empire Strikes Back is that it came out during a time, you know, it was released in 1980, so like I said, 3 years after the first one, and the special effects at the time were very limited, but still, they had evolved quite a lot from the New Hope eras, you know, because George Lucas directing the first movie took such a toll on his mental health that he actually wanted to step back a little bit and kind of like gave the reins over to other people. He brought in some different writers, you know. One of them unfortunately passed away in 78, so he kind of took the reins again. So then he started to develop a little bit more his special effects company, which was Industrial Light and Magic, you know, ILM, and he kind of used that to create much better special effects this time around, you know, because the original Star Wars, you know, had around 360 special effects, whereas Empire had over 600, you know, more or less that ballpark estimate there. So there were many different special effects, you know, but a lot of the scenes in the settings were actually filmed on location, so it made everything just stand out so much more, you know. It became a prime staple in pop culture, and bro, people were clamoring for this sequel, and they got something that they just could never have expected would have become such a success, you know. Lucas was not anticipating A New Hope to be so successful, so he was actually surprised, you know, and he didn't really have plans for a major sequel, but he did it and it came out, and we finally get introduced to some better characters, you know, and more fleshed out details and development. The plot twist where Darth Vader says he's Luke Skywalker's father is known to be one of the greatest plot twists in cinematic history, and very well so. I love it so much. This movie is awesome, and it really does deserve a very, very, you know, detailed review here, which is what I'm going to give to you guys. However, before that, I'm going to make a little transition here by showing you a clip from the original 1980 movie.
The Star Wars saga continues with a special limited engagement of The Empire Strikes Back, starting November 19th.
Pretty nostalgic, huh? Pretty darn nostalgic. You know what else is nostalgic? My Star Wars t-shirt right here that I've been wearing for a while now. I wore it in the first review for New Hope because it is actually a New Hope, you know, the original poster for the movie. I'm wearing it today, and I'm probably going to wear it for the entirety of my Star Wars saga review because it's the only Star Wars shirt that I have. The other one that I have is more pop culture. It's a Darth Vader with the Starbucks thing, but it's black and it sucks. I'll probably just wear this one. So anyway, now onto the plot, you know. Now, Star Wars Empire Strikes Back has one of the most memorable plots in the entire saga because we are finally introduced to a few different characters, character dynamics, you know, and they evolve with each other, you know. Immediately it starts off on the planet Hoth with Luke I got distracted because of the damn motorcycle. It starts off on the ice planet of Hoth with Luke getting hurt by a Wampa. Han goes out to find him, you know, and then slowly we see a vision of Ben Kenobi saying that he has to go to Dagobah to train with Yoda, who he envisions as a great Jedi warrior. So the events transpire, you know, they escape Hoth, and then Luke eventually finds his way to Dagobah, where we see for the first time the Yoda character, who is actually he's portrayed by a puppet, you know, and Frank Oz controls it, and I also believe he's the voice, you know. So it's really awesome to see Yoda for the first time, because we had no idea he would become such a centerpiece in the Star Wars dynasty, you know, in the franchise, and become one of the greatest characters. And we would later find out in the prequels that he was one of the greatest Jedi in all of the galaxy, you know. So now the training montage is also very epic. You know, Luke begins to learn the ways of the Force, although he is a little hesitant at first, you know. He's still kind of crude with the lightsaber. Because he's much older, you know, it's hard for him to control his emotions. But there are a few subplots like Han and Leia and Chewbacca, 3PO, R2, the droids going to the Cloud City of Bespin to meet up with his old friend Lando Calrissian, you know. We would eventually find out that the Empire is orchestrating the meeting, you know, because don't forget that the Rebels actually blew up the Death Star in the last movie, so the Empire is hell-bent on revenge, you know. That's why the movie is called The Empire Strikes Back. So Darth Vader is actually funny because we see him a lot more in this movie, although despite being such an epic and infamous character, he only had 12 minutes of screen time in the entire freaking trilogy. You know, it's kind of sad. But anyway, so we are introduced to him, and also the bounty hunter Boba Fett, you know. There are so many different dynamics that play out throughout the movie. It's pretty long, and there were a few scenes that were cut, you know, but one of the most pivotal points is the romance between Han and Leia, which is formed from, well, Han has always been coming on to Leia, but she very clearly resists him, you know, because she calls him, and I quote, a scoundrel. There was even a book released, I believe it was called The Scoundrel and the Princess, or The Princess and the Scoundrel, you know, one of those two, which is about their love relationship, you know. And it's really funny how this works out, because the romance, it's not that it's random, it was there, it was festering, you know. Han was always very charming and smug, and she was always at him, you know, at his neck, and at his throat is the expression, you know. But we find out that she's actually been nurturing some kind of caring sentiment for him, you know, which actually, they pick a pretty interesting time for it to happen, because they get stuck inside of the stomach of a freaking worm, in the mouth of a worm. They go inside of a cave to escape some TIE fighters, then we find out it's actually a worm, and the ship breaks down, and there are creatures and stuff, you know. The Millennium Falcon flight scenes are so epic because it is one of the most iconic ships in movie history, not just Star Wars. So we see a lot of really cool sequences with it flying, you know. The special effects are a little better now, so it looks like it's really taking flight in space. It's freaking awesome, you know. Then we, of course, after Luke trains considerably with Yoda on Dagobah, he goes to Bespin because of a vision of his friends in danger. He goes and finally faces Darth Vader, you know, for the first time, and it is a very, very interesting battle. It's not like large scale because it was back in the 80s, but the fight choreography was actually pretty stellar for the time, you know. When they did fight, there were a few different sequences going through a few different settings within the, I believe they were in a factory of sorts, you know. And then, of course, it starts to build up to the climax, you know. It crescendos to the climax where Darth Vader gets the upper hand by cutting Luke's hand off, you know, after trying to tempt him to the dark side and trying to convince him to join him, you know. But this is where it all climaxes, because we get the iconic lines of, you know, Luke says, well, Ben told me that you killed my father, you know, and then he says, no, Luke, I am your father, which actually generated this Mandela effect of people think that he actually said, Luke, I am your father, but no, he said, no, Luke, I am your father. And then, of course, there's footage on YouTube of the audience reacting to that very shocked moment, you know, they're like gasping and stuff, you know, where he goes, no, it's not true, that's impossible, yada, yada, yada. Then he falls down the shaft, you know, and it's a very hard blow to him, you know. It's really hard for him to accept that, because I think anybody would have difficulty doing so. But we also see the subplot in Bespin play out, you know, where Han was actually frozen in a carbonite and shipped off to Jabba the Hutt because he was owing money to him and was apparently skiving off, you know. So Boba Fett claims him and takes him to Jabba, you know, to apparently collect a bounty. So yes, Luke is unfortunately too late to save Han, but he does reunite with Leia, C-3PO, R2, you know. We find out that Lando is a dirty, rotten traitor, but then he switches sides again because of regret or remorse. I don't really know. Freaking Billy D. Williams. But anyway, so yeah, man, very good performance by the actors. I really love it so much. And now, before I continue and get into a little bit more of the production, though, the movie does end there with Luke getting a robotic arm to replace his hand, you know. Well, his hand, not the arm, right? It's not Anakin. He gets a robotic hand to replace the one that he lost, and that's where the movie concludes, literally setting up perfectly the sequel, which would be Return of the Jedi, but we're going to get to that later. Let's take a look at another clip here from Empire Strikes Back. guys can probably imagine, you know, The Empire Strikes Back took on many more special and practical effects than the original Star Wars, you know, because A New Hope was largely kid-friendly. Okay, no, that's not the right word. It was at least compared to Empire, it was more family-friendly. It was a bit more fun and adventurous, you know, and Empire took on a little bit of a darker and more mature theme, you know, with its plot elements and characters and the high stakes involved now, you know, so it was much more visceral. So as such, the effects had to be much more amped up, you know. Around 100 or so people were working daily to make the movie a reality in the special effects department, you know. There were people working on making the Yoda puppet actually come to life, you know. There was a large mixture of miniatures and stop motion, matte paintings and articulated models, you know. The scenes on Hoth with the giant Imperial walkers, the AT-ATs, you know. I do believe it is all-terrain attack tracker, I forgot what it's called, but you know, the AT-ATs, you know, that was actually a mixture of forced perspective, you know, where you take miniature models and film them on a background and they actually look much bigger, you know, when the actors are put in the foreground. So that's kind of how the effect was used, you know. So many explosions and the CGI for the lightsabers and blasters, you know, there was a large combination of effects, you know, but it did largely rely on practical effects, such that the setting for the ice planet of Hoth was actually Norway, you know, and Lucas did not get very lucky because filming coincided with the worst snowstorm in half a century in that country, you know. So there were blizzards and a lot of snow and ice pelting the production, you know. Like the freaking camera lenses froze up and snow went into the equipment, you know. They had to keep the cameras warm so the crew members also wouldn't get frostbite, you know. One guy even slipped and broke 2 ribs, and there were days when they literally could not go outside to shoot, you know. There are some scenes that you can see outside where you see that the sky is clear, there's no snow, but others there's a lot of snow in the camera, you know, in the shots. So like when Luke when Han went to rescue Luke, you know, so there was a lot of trouble in production because of this, because Mother Nature doesn't really always agree with you wanting to do things, you know. Like if she wants to throw in a snowstorm, she's gonna throw in a damn snowstorm, you know. So I imagine it was pretty frustrating as well, you know. So there were so many other, you know, because like even the paint cans, you know, where they actually had to where they had the paint store to paint the stuff, you know, the paint literally froze in the cans, man, you know. But another cool thing is that all the vehicles that you see are actually full scale, you know. They actually built, for example, the snow speeders on Hoth, they actually built them, you know, to full capacity. So very nice large scale models. So it's really nice, man, you know. It's really cool because it gives the entire movie a much more authentic feel, you know. And of course, bringing back the ensemble cast, you know, we had of course David Prowse depicting the very large Darth Vader and James Earl Jones doing his iconic voice, you know. So there was much more character development, and despite, you know, a lot of injuries and illnesses and fires, you know, that actually hampered the production cost, you know, it still came out really well. And this truly is an amazing work of art of a movie, man, you know. Became such a pop culture phenomenon. I think I even mentioned that already, you know, but it went on to become even larger than the original Star Wars itself, you know. And there were many more there was many more merchandising tie-ins and games and books, you know, and it spawned an even bigger saga later on. But this is truly where Star Wars was at its peak, you know. And even though there were many remasters over the years, the original, as always, is something special, you know, and I really like it a lot. So let's take a look at another clip here before I go to the final stretch of this review. Now, because Empire Strikes Back had such a significant impact in filmmaking as a whole and pop culture in general, you know, considered, I repeat, to be the greatest Star Wars movie, you know, and one of the best films ever made, you know, it did still have its flaws. We are talking about something that was made in, you know, 1980, so right at the start of the 80s there, you know. There's somewhat of special effects. Remember, I'm reviewing the original movie, by the way. I'm not talking about the special editions, which obviously look much better, you know, after Lucas redid them and added in better digital effects and CGI and stuff. If I was going to review the latest reiteration of Empire Strikes Back, it would obviously get a perfect rating, you know, but I'm talking about the original 1980 experience, you know, and that one did have a few flaws, you know, with the practical and special effects, you know, many of which did not age very well at all, but the overall story and the character development was there. It was really awesome, and I do love it, you know. It is my favorite of the original trilogy, you know. However, It was not perfect, you know, damn near flawless, but because of its impact and the way that it really surpassed the original in terms of pretty much everything, you know, especially the story and character development, I'm going to be giving The Empire Strikes Back a resounding 9 out of 10. That is my final rating, the same way that I gave A New Hope 8 out of 10 because it wasn't perfect. Because this movie was considerably better, I'm going to go one rating up, you know, so that is going to be my final rating for Empire Strikes Back. This is an amazing movie and it is just timeless, man, you know. All of the amazing subplots just connect so seamlessly, you know. The love story between Han and Leia and Luke on his journey to become a Jedi and actually, you know, finding more about himself through Darth Vader and the teachings of Yoda, you know. There was a very interesting vision in the Cave of Dagobah where he sees Vader, fights him, and then we see that it's actually him, you know. It's really crazy. It's very good foreshadowing, you know. There are many different elements in The Empire Strikes Back that come together to make it an amazing motion picture, you know, drawing inspiration from different mythologies and religion for the Force, you know, and we are introduced to the Star Wars universe, you know, we go to different planets and find out about a larger star system out there, you know, different space travel, so it's really nice, man, and this movie truly is, you know, just timeless. I haven't watched the most recent reiteration of Empire Strikes Back whenever it came out, the Star Wars, I think maybe it was the 20th anniversary special edition, you know, no, not that, I think even more, because it's been more than 20 years, right, it's been like 30. I don't know, maybe I'll watch it and review it later, you know, it's actually been more, hasn't it? In 1980, we're in 2023, man, it's been like 40 years, hasn't it? If my math does it? Yep, it's been 43 freaking years since the movie came out. There's definitely been a more recent special edition redoing of it, you know, I'm probably gonna watch that one. And this concludes my review of the sequel to A New Hope, you know, and stick around because I've been playing Battlefront 2, so there's going to be more Star Wars content, and I'm also gonna be talking about other stuff, starting to review some TV shows as well, you know, in the Star Wars canon, but it's all going to, I'm going to wrap up the first 3 movies, so stay tuned because very soon, possibly still this week, you know, in a few days, I will review Return of the Jedi, you know, and I will wrap up the original trilogy. So stay tuned for that, guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think about Star Wars if you've seen the movie. It is impossible for you to have gotten spoilers at this point, you know, unless you live under a very, very heavy rock, you know, because holy crap, even if you've never seen the movie, you know what happens because the internet does not allow you to live without Star Wars spoilers, you know. And that's it, guys. If you happen to like this video, please go ahead and give it a like and also subscribe to my channel because I release videos every single day. And while you're at it, do hit the notification bell too so you can know exactly what time I upload it. It's all good. It's all good. This is Chazzy signing out for now. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Roll the final clip and then the outro screen.
Empire Strikes Back, returning to your galaxy November 19th.